What is up, guys? My name is Logan Tramelin, and this is the Defying Odds podcast. Today I have on Jacqueline Dallas. Jacqueline Dallas started her own YouTube channel called NothingButTech. She is a tech YouTuber. She's a CEO of her own company. She's a public speaker. She has 192,000 subscribers, and she has over 0.5 million views now. So Jacqueline, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I just want to say I'm a huge fan of the podcast. We were just talking about it. I watched the Cody Water episode. He's like a good friend of mine. And then I went down the rabbit hole of watching a lot of your episodes. And you're such a good host. I'm so honored to be on.
I really appreciate it. I just started doing this, so it's definitely me getting outside of my comfort zone. But it's a skill that I know that will come with time.
What do you feel like has been like the hardest thing to learn with hosting?
I don't know. Sometimes, I've had a few guests on where I didn't have enough questions. I didn't know a lot about them. Thankfully, you, I could do research on you and it comes up, and there's other, news outlets that have talked about you. Where some of the people, actually Cody has a decent following, but some of the guests that I had on didn't have anything. So I'm how can I learn more about them? And some of them were really good friends, so that was easy because I already knew a ton about them. But I'd say that was the biggest challenge, just trying to figure out compelling questions without just scraping the bottom of the barrel,
Yeah, that's so interesting. You're right. When you have someone that has a social media presence on, you can kind of crowdsource questions a little bit because you can find out what are their viewers commenting a lot, and then what are other publications saying. But I feel like you've had a lot of people on the podcast that are experts in a certain field but don't have a public presence.
Yeah, exactly. And my goal isn't to have just, are the celebrities on the podcast, just anybody who really has a cool story, who's been through a lot of adversity, who's had success in business. That's really who I'm tailoring to, regardless of how big their following is.
I love it. What was the first project that you started? Was it the media company, or has there been something before that?
No, I did media first, way back when I went to Florida State University. It didn't work out. I dropped out, didn't do the business. Then did a clothing brand. That didn't work out. Then I did action sports video, which we still do to this day for the past 5 years.
Okay.
And that was the first thing. And now we're getting back into commercial video and stuff like that. So yeah, I've tried a bunch of different stuff.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think it's actually the more interesting stories are the failures before something clicked, because a lot of the time I feel like people only share the one business that did well. And that's why I love Cody's episode so much, because I feel like he talked a lot about all the different jobs that he's had. Because I feel like often, even with my career, you can't really tell where the story is going until you look back, and then you can kind of connect all the dots, and you're this thing, even though it didn't work out, I learned the skill from that, and that's why I'm here now. But in the moment, it just feels like a failure.
Yeah, and we'll get into it, but one of my favorite things to ask people is what has been your biggest challenge? The biggest problem you've ever had to overcome. That always gives good answers. I
love that. Yeah. No, I'm so stoked. I think also there's been this huge uprise in creator economy coverage. I feel from 2020, 2021. And what's been so cool about that is that as a creator, I think the path to growing a business is so different than most other jobs. You could if you want to become a lawyer, you kind of have the process of what you need to do. It's really hard, but all right, undergrad, law school, internships, etc. But becoming a creator, one of the things I Colin and Samir often say is that the word creator is the word athlete. It's an all-encompassing thing that then can be defined by basketball player, tennis, and each niche is its own thing. So even my niche versus Cody's is so different. And there's a lot of similarities in the challenges that we face and what we have to do. But I think that that's one of the most exciting things about the business model of a creator, is that there's so many different ways to build it.
Yeah. It's opportunities are literally endless, because you could even be on a completely different platform,
Totally.
So it's cool. Yeah. So getting into it, talking about the creator, how did you come up with the idea of NothingButTech, your YouTube channel and the business, and what inspired you to start in the first place?
Yeah. So I started the channel. It will be, I think, actually 8 years in February. And I started the channel when I was 13, and I just had this love for technology that was kind of all-encompassing throughout my life. A new Apple keynote would happen, and my friends would text me, and they'd be send me a summary of what's going on. So I kind of had this natural thing happening in my life where I was taking technology and then summarizing it, and I loved doing it. And then at the same time, my grandma was asking me for a lot of tech help, resetting an email password or downloading a Kindle book. And I was kind of shooting these short little how-to videos for her on how to do these things. And so kind of perfect storm. I was also really interested in film production. I had done some paid media stuff. was like playing around with green screening in school, like all these different things. And I just posted, I was like, I'm going to post video. Like there was no intention in like a solidified way of like, this is going to become a business. Like that was obviously the dream. I was like looking at creators like Marquez and TLD, and I obviously had the aspirations for that, but it was just kind of like, let me give it a go. So I got a microphone that I was going to use to record the audio, because I think one of the things that even like to this day, people will like deal with bad video, but they will not deal with bad audio. And so I was like, this makes sense. I was also kind of like singing at the time, so all stars aligning, like all the different facets of my life coming into one. And I posted that first video. It was terrible, like just genuinely such a bad video. But that was kind of the start. And then over time, it became more so creating videos, reviewing technology, explaining different tech concepts to a more like tech-focused audience versus people that didn't understand technology.
Yeah. So in the beginning, what was the process of getting followers? You know, obviously you started 8 years ago when you were 13. So how long did you do it consistently for, or were you doing it consistently before you started to see results from it and realize that it could be a business?
Yeah, you know, I think what's really interesting about YouTube is that there are so many different, like, I think, ways to define consistency. Like there was that daily vlog era. There's like posting on a weekly schedule. This is the first year that I'm actually committing to a schedule of posting every other Friday. Up until this point, I've been consistent throughout the last 8 years, but there was never like, there will be a video on X day. And the main reason for that is that the content is very like tech dependent. So when companies come out with a new phone, that's going to influence what day I release it. So even this year, that will be one of the challenges that I face with like the upload schedule. Like I may have to get creative with what videos go up when. But I think having a schedule as a creator is so important, depending on the type of person that you are, because it creates discipline. So I started a podcast like 2 years ago. And with that podcast, we post every single Monday. And we've like almost never missed a Monday episode. And the reason why is because we're accountable to the schedule. And so I was like, why is a podcast getting done when it's like not my job, it's much less important, but then the videos are more sporadic? Like what's the difference? And really the only difference, aside from the fact that podcast is like significantly easier to make, is that it's on a schedule. So I think like committing to a schedule, depending on like what part of your career you're in, is really important. So this year, stoked to be doing that. But when I was first starting, I posted like a ton of videos because they were all like lower quality, like little tutorials, like screen recordings. And then obviously now the videos have become much more intricate, so they take longer to make. But I've been like relatively, I would say, very consistent over like the last 8 years.
Yeah. So you just stuck with it, and seems like you're very similar to how I'm approaching pretty much all my content. It's like, I want to have a schedule. I know that I need to put out content, but I'm not hard on myself if I miss one. You know, like there was a few weeks where I think I posted the podcast on Tuesday or Wednesday, or, I haven't missed a week yet, but the goal is just to keep putting out content and stay consistent regardless of that hard schedule,
Yeah, I think that there's a balance, right? Like, I think it's like, there's a balance, because if you think about like your career being a very long career, right? Like ideally I'm doing this for decades, right? So being really hard on myself 1 week, if that is going to burn me out, is then not worth it. But then there's also this element of like, you also need to be disciplined a little bit, because like consistency is what builds a community. So I think it's a balance. Like any habit is, I think like when you take like an all or nothing approach with any type of habit, you're actually less likely to complete the habit. It's like, let's say you said like, I'm only going to go to the gym for 60 minutes every single day, and then you just don't have it in you one day to go for 60 minutes. You're better off going for like 5 minutes than skipping the whole day. But I think if you approach it like an all or nothing, then you would skip the whole day. So I think with YouTube, it's the same thing. And then also I think with YouTube, like the content that I'm making has changed a little bit. So when I was first starting, since it was like easier to make, there'd be more of it. And also I was making like very much like a lot of content around the news. And then timing is so important. One of the goals for this year is to create a little bit more of like evergreen content, so that becomes a little bit less important.
Yeah. So growing the YouTube channel, how did you go about like actually seeing success with it? Like, how did you promote it and grow it? Obviously, I feel like some of your videos just popped off, but was there anything in particular, or any moments in time or videos that you made in particular that really catapulted your growth?
For sure. One of the things that Marquez Brownlee says, who's one of the biggest tech YouTubers, is that one of the worst things that can happen to you is getting a viral video. And the reason why is because if you have one video that goes viral, it can kind of create the audience expectation that that's the only type of content you're going to make. And like, what if they only like this one video? You're much better off having people subscribe over a gradual period of time, because everyone likes different videos. It can kind of build like this more diverse audience that is going to resonate with all types of content. So one of the things that I'm really lucky with is that the channel growth has been very gradual for the most part. There are a couple moments for sure of like, wow, this is a moment of like big growth. So one of the biggest ones was meeting Casey Neistat, who I'm now lucky to like call a good friend, in 2018. I like made this video. He created this company called 368, which is still an amazing company. Their goal is to like help creators. And so I saw it. I was like, I would love to do something with 368. Literally like not even like anything public. I just wanted to like be part of it because I thought it was such a cool mission. And then fast forward 6 months, we both ended up going to an event for Samsung. He was so cool and invited me to come with him. We go together. I have like no expectations for the day, just like have a great time with him. And then he ends up making a video about it and post that video. And I think right before the video, I had like 50,000 subscribers. And then right after the video, I had like 80,000 subscribers.
That's awesome.
Which is crazy. Like, and what was another good point about this is that a lot of the time, shout out from a creator is like very bad because you get like dead subscribers where they subscribe and they don't. But what he did really well is that he kind of like pitched what the value prop of the channel was. So the only people that subscribed were actually interested in tech videos. So it actually, the people stayed consistent. And even now, like a lot of people that comment on the videos are from that initial shout out. But just to quickly say how I got to like the 50,000 subscribers before that, a lot of it is just like consistency. Like I think after year one, I only had like 3,000 subscribers. And most of those came in the last 2 months of that year. I think for like the majority of the year, like for the first, I think I gained 4 subscribers in like the first week of creating the channel, and then it stayed at 4 subscribers for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then slowly it picked up. And then one of the things that I feel like I've done well and has definitely helped is collaborations with other tech YouTubers. So like there's this guy named Kevin the Tech Ninja, and when I had like 800 subscribers, he had maybe like 10,000, and he put me in a video, and then I gained like 300 new people from that. So I think like all these like gradual growth moments of like working with other people in the space, and then also some videos, because I'm making videos around like products, and like that's almost like social hacking in a way because people already know what the product is or what the event is, and then you're making something around a topic that they're already interested in. So inherently like some videos just kind of blew up a little bit.
Yeah, I did one video actually just because I was there when you remember Boosted Boards? The
company, of course.
Casey rode them. They came out with that new scooter, and I was living in New York City at the time, and I was going to a demo day, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a video while I'm here, and that actually ended up being one of the most popular videos on my personal YouTube channel just because it was just newsjacking and getting in front of, like, nobody else had a video out about it
Totally.
yet.
Yeah, sometimes that's all that matters. Like sometimes more than the actual video being good is just the relevance of it, which is something that I constantly have to remind myself of because I can be a little bit of a perfectionist with the videos where I'm like, oh, like, let me take 10 more hours and make this 1 second better. And sometimes it's just like, get it to 80% and then post it because people are going to be interested now, but they won't be down the line.
So growing the YouTube channel over the past 8 years, this is the question that I foreshadowed earlier.
Okay.
What challenges, the biggest challenge, some of the biggest struggles that you had to deal with in growing the company and the YouTube?
Yeah. I will say, I'll preface it by saying I feel like I've been super lucky and privileged in like a lot of different ways with how things have worked out and like the serendipity of life. Not to say that there haven't been a lot of challenges. For sure there have. I feel like we can go so many different routes. Like there have been like challenges from the YouTube channel, then in my personal life, there's been like work-related challenges. I think that one of the things that we can like talk about first is that when you're a YouTuber, part of your job is just like being likable in a way. Yeah. And so I think like part of the reason that I watch most creators is just because I like them and I want to be friends with them. And I think when you're a YouTuber, that becomes a challenge because it's like, how do you like not let that affect the way that you perceive yourself? Especially because I started when I was 13. So there were definitely times, like that's like a very transformational, like my entire teenage years are documented online, right? That's like a very transformational time in your life. And I think that there were definitely times where I cared too much about how successful it was, like externally, like was I good enough? Was the content good enough? Like what was public opinion saying? And then I also think that one of the things that another challenge that creators face is that when you're creating something, you're like selling a product in a sense. And so it's not 100% all parts of your personality. Like if I went on there and I started talking about like Pokemon, people would be like, what is going on right now? Like maybe it would resonate with some people, but it wouldn't resonate with the whole audience. And so I think that one of the things that has helped a lot with like separating like, yes, this is me. And like, if people like the videos, like they would probably like me in real life, I hope. But at the same time, it's an unrealistic expectation to assume that I'm going to share every single thing that I'm interested in online, and kind of taking that expectation away has made it easier to make content. But then I've also actively kind of like gone the route of trying to, especially in the last 6 months, make content that feels more personal. So like one of the things I've started doing is day in the life review videos, where it's like I'm reviewing the phone, but then I'm also out and about in the world because I want to create that connection with the audience. I feel like that's so important. Or like talking tech, where I'm like literally doing an interview. I feel like there's like this whole element. The reason why I love conversational podcasts so much is because tech is something that I'm so interested in. It's one of like the biggest interests in my life. But before I started YouTube, I never knew anyone else that was interested in it. And so YouTube kind of gave me this opportunity to have the community and friends that had this like same common interest. And so now one of my goals is to give that to other people. And so I think that the content that like I'm super interested in is content that does that, which is like a day in life review or talking tech or an explainer. But another challenge that I think a lot of creators face is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the career. And I think you can look at that as like a positive or a negative. I choose to look at it as a positive because it means like at any moment, anything amazing could happen. Like literally, I last month got an email randomly. It was like, do you want to come to Paris for 4 days? And I was like, yeah, we'd love to, right? But then the downside of that is that there are some months where like your income is so unstable. Like you'll make like 50% of your income in 1 month and then like nothing in the next. And so I think that like it's important to be responsible and save. Like one of the things that I've really done is like saved a lot of runway so there's not like the stress. And then I think looking at instability as a positive, like anything, like figuring out a good baseline. And then on top of that, like anything cool could happen. You could have a like video blow up. You could have a new opportunity. You could like be pitched for a new project. I think that that's what makes it more exciting than a typical like 9 to 5. But obviously the typical 9 to 5, like not to like, I think that there's a lot of benefits of that. It's like you do get stability of like knowing what your day-to-day is going to be like. But I think for myself personally, I like the newness every day. You probably feel the same way, right? As like running a media company.
Yeah, I mean, every day I show up here and it's not like some days I have like client work that I have to get done, but most days it's like, okay, where is the best use of my time today? And I get to focus on that. Like today was all action sports and building that brand and getting ready for the new year, where yesterday it was not action sports related at all and it was completely different side of the business. So I love that too. You mentioned Talking Tech, your interview channel. Explain a little bit about that. And I saw it on your YouTube channel. I didn't watch it, but you interviewed, was it the Google CEO?
Yeah, Sundar Pichai.
How did you get that opportunity and how cool was that?
So cool on so many different levels. The level that I think most people wouldn't know from the outside is that my dream job before I started YouTube was to work at Google. So like when I was a little kid, I saw the movie The Internship and I was like, this is it. This is the company. I love their values. I love I'm such a big like community extroverted person where it's like I love being around people. And so that movie to me was like the epitome of all the things, like tech, community, whatever. And so before I started YouTube, that was it for me. And so then getting to interview him and like fly out to the campus was such a full circle moment. And in a way, like being a YouTuber, you kind of work for Google because they own YouTube. So I felt like it was just like the serendipity of like, you never really know how life is going to work out, but like a lot of the times things work out a little bit different than you expected, but better. And so that was surreal on that level. And then also just on a level of like, Sundar was genuinely such a kind, like amazing person. And he was so smart too. And I think like when I think about the future of what's going to happen with like artificial intelligence and like the ethics around that and global warming, like there isn't anyone else that I would want to have the power that he has. Like I truly believe that he's going to do so many good things for the world in a way that I don't trust some other major big tech CEOs where I'm like, are the intentions good? Like, I don't know. I feel like his intentions feel really pure. And the way that interview came to be is that I like obviously on the channel review a lot of phones. And so alongside that, you get invited to events where they launch the phones and the tech. So with COVID, it kind of stopped for a while, but normally there's like 10 to 20 keynotes throughout the year. You like are around the PR people for the companies, other tech YouTubers. It's one of the best parts of the job. Like you get to really be engrossed in the community. And so I have been invited to their events in the past and became like good friends with the PR person. And I guess Sundar wanted to do interviews with YouTubers because like to kind of empower the platform because Google owns YouTube. And they pitched me for it. And so I guess it went through. And then they like called me like maybe 3 days before and they were like, Google I/O is coming up. No one's really going because of COVID, but we're going to have like 3 YouTubers out. Would you want to come and do this? And I had never interviewed a CEO before. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Down. And it went really well. Like it was so fun. It was like completely off the cuff, just like conversation, which I think is like honestly what makes the best interviews, because I'm like a very big believer in like the humanity is like what makes the conversation fun to listen to. So he was great, and it was an amazing experience.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it was so fun.
So pulling this question into a little bit of, you're invited to those events. How do you stay on top of, the latest trends? Is it as simple as just them reaching out to you and letting you know when they're dropping phones and texts and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is. I think that's one of the reasons why the industry, the tech industry, can sometimes feel hard to break into, because there's like this list of people that get invited to the events and get the products. And because timing is so important, like how many iPad reviews are you going to watch? If you're not on the list, it can be challenging. And so if you're like an aspiring creator listening to this, what I would say in the beginning, like I wasn't invited to these events for a long time, obviously. What I did, and like I think that like you'll probably feel uncomfortable when you hear it, because like it wasn't comfortable for me either, but like cold call people, the anxiety that comes from cold calling sucks. Like I'm sure like no one wants to hear that they have to cold call, but because no one is doing it, it really is so effective, and cold emailing as well. So I would find like the specific PR person, like their email is online, and then I would literally just call them up and like give them my little pitch and try to work with them. And if that didn't work, then I would also email. And I feel like people really underestimate the success rate of a cold email or a cold call. Like if people only take one thing from this interview, I think it would be like, you should cold email a different person every day that you care about working with, because I feel like the success rate with it is like 90+%. Like, as long as the email is condensed and like there's a value proposition offered and like you're being kind in it, like I think it's pretty effective, because most people don't do it. So that's kind of how it works. And then also paying attention to things like Google Trends, like that's a web page where you can see what people are searching for. But then honestly, like most of all, it's like, what am I personally interested in? Like one of my best friends recently was like raving to me about this new thing called ChatGPT, which is this open AI. It's actually like, I feel like it could change the world. And she was so excited about it, and like her enthusiasm for it was so infectious. So I ended up going down like this 2-day rabbit hole of just like researching it. And so I made a video on it, even though like I didn't do any like research of like, is this topic like going to be something that a lot of people are interested in? But I feel like when you're passionate about it, it kind of just bleeds through.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, just yesterday, I spent an hour planning a video for our action sports brand and writing a script and outlining it. I'm like, let me go to ChatGPT and type in and see what it says. It was literally like 80% of what I just spent an hour doing.
No way.
I'm like, I should have just started here. Like it would have taken 5 minutes for me to do it if I would have started there.
Yeah, one of the same best friend I was just talking about is like using it now every single day for different things.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like you can ask it to like write a workout routine for you, like write an initial cold email. Like sometimes I feel like the activation energy to start a task is what prevents us from doing it. And so literally just having ChatGPT there to help you start the task could be game changing.
Yeah. So talking about your business and YouTube, how do you balance the business needs from the creative needs? Obviously your business is very heavily tied into your YouTube videos, but how do you balance the growth of the business as a whole and creating more videos?
Such a good question. I think that if you ask anyone that knows me, they would be like, Jacqueline is all about the long game. And it's because like I've said no to so many opportunities that in the moment would have like helped a lot financially, but felt like either against my ethics or against like the big vision of the brand. And so my agent, Dave Wiskus, will say all the time, like Jacqueline like wants to like do big things, and it's just a matter of like trying to like get things, like not slow it down while being realistic. And it's because like, I think like I approach life with like this very like optimistic lens, because I feel like you could approach it either way, and like either way something's going to happen, but I would rather like be optimistic and like think something's going to happen, and then if it doesn't, deal with it then, versus like go in with like the mindset of like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make this work. And so similarly, because I think that, because I have like this optimistic take, I'm like, I have a lot of conviction that the business is going to grow later on. So I'm more willing to be like a little bit more scrappy with it now and invest a ton of money, like almost like reinvest almost everything the business is making right now, because I have a lot of conviction that it's going to keep growing. But I think one of the things that has been like a challenge on the business front is that when you're a company, I think a lot of creators don't think about YouTube as becoming a media business. But if you're doing it right, I think that's kind of what you're doing. Obviously there are exceptions, but I think in general, if you're doing it right, then think about it as a media business. It's like, what is your minimum viable product? Like what value are people getting from you? I think honestly having those guardrails helps you continue to create value and also not get stuck in like, what should I make next? Because if you know that people are coming to feel empowered and educated about technology, then everything should be in service of that. I'm not going to make a video like, here's my skincare routine, because it wouldn't relate. But if I was viewing it as like, let me just like do like creative whims, like whatever I feel like at the time, then I think I would be like, then I'll make that skincare video. So I think that there's a certain limit of like, yes, since it's a business, like you have to make sure that the product is relevant. But also because it's also like you as a person, I think that what bleeds through is like if you actually care about the product, or like the video that you're making. So it is this balance for sure. And oftentimes they're aligned, but there are definitely times where it's a little bit of a process to get them aligned.
How do you go about measuring success?
Okay.
And can you share any success stories that you've had so far? Obviously, CEO of Google is definitely one of them.
Definitely one of them. That's such a good question. Yeah. How do you measure success? I think there are so many different ways, like so many different metrics that you have to hit to like feel fully satisfied. And I think one of the things with being like, you probably feel this too, of like being a company owner is like, you're constantly striving towards the next goal, and you kind of have to be, especially if you have like a group of people working with you, then you need like that Northern Star to be like, this is what we're aiming towards, right? So like right now that's 1 million subscribers. And more importantly, like a community of people that like actually love the content and stuff. But I think success, like on a personal level, is like fulfillment and excitement at work and like stability in some sense. And like pushing myself, like becoming better. On like a company level, I feel like success is like creating content that actually matters, and matters in like the sense of like, it's either making someone's day a little bit better, it's educating them about something they didn't know, like they didn't know something, then they watched the video and they have this transformation where they do. I think like if I had like an aspiration for the videos, it would be like people watching it and being like, wow, like that's a really great video, I'm so happy I found this channel.
Yeah.
And then I think on like obviously on a business end, like success on a financial side with YouTube is interesting because you have the success of like AdSense, which is like pretty insignificant for most creators. And then you have the success of like brand deals and affiliate and public speaking. And I think on that front, there's so many different ways to do it. Like Ali Abdallah, actually, if anyone's interested in like the intricacies of the business, he just made a whole video breaking down like the $4.5 million of revenue he made this year and where it came from. And I think that that video is so inspiring because like $700,000 is coming from Skillshare, which is this like online video platform. It's like, you would never expect that you can make $700,000 from teaching courses, but you can. And I think that that just shows like with YouTube and any content platform online, like there's so many different ways to do it. So for me personally, like success will be eventually like having an office space, people working full time at the company, like having a high enough profit margin where like we're able to kind of experiment with videos and not have the stakes of every video feel so high. I think that's one of the things Mark Rober has said is like one of the reasons why he feels he's successful as a YouTuber is because the stakes never got high enough where he was like, this is no longer fun. He could always have a video bomb and be okay. And I feel like as a YouTuber, that's so important because you're constantly experimenting and trying new things.
Yeah. So how do you approach engagement and actually connecting with your followers? Like, what's your strategy? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's like one of the most important things for me. Like relationship building is like up there, top 3 most important things. And also one of the most fun things. Like I think what important thing for anyone to do is like, look at like what is adding energy to my life and then what is draining energy for my life. And especially in a work context. And so for me, there are certain things like maybe like shooting 8 hours of B-roll is like very draining at the end. But like doing like a 3-hour live stream with the community is like very, like gives me energy. And so that's one of the ways I do it, like live streams. I just did a live stream yesterday where I'm literally like a maniac. Like there's like no reason to watch this. I'm an absolute menace in this live stream. Like, and just having fun with everyone. And that video got the same amount of views as like a video that I spent like 15 hours on.
Yeah, that's funny.
Which is why, like, good and bad, honestly. But I think, like, it's, like, unfortunate. But it's also good because it means, like, people just want to hang out. And so I think that's one of the things I've really focused on throughout, like, the last 8 years is, like, how do I, like, create this connection? Because I think one of the reasons why I started YouTube is because I didn't have any friends that were interested in tech. And so I think, like, one of the reasons why people come to the channel is to, like, get that need fulfilled of, like, having someone that they can relate to on tech. And so it's through like live streams. I also, for the last 2 years, have launched a new logo every month that is like the NBT logo, but then it's themed with like something relevant to the month. So like October would be like Halloween. And then within that, there are like little Easter eggs to things that I love. So like Taylor Swift or Mission Impossible. And I think that that's really also helped build a community because it's like a way for people to get to know my interests and then also kind of like have this event every month where we all come together and launch something.
That's cool. That reminds me of how Google's their
Yeah.
browser changes every
They
month.
were the inspo for me. For sure.
That's really cool that you do that.
Thank you.
So how do you take social feedback? Like, are you constantly reading comments? Are you constantly trying to find things that, your consistent viewers are telling you to do? Or how do you use feedback from your community as a way to move the business forward, as a way to use or move your creative ideas forward?
Yeah, there's a quote that I love that I don't remember who said, but it's like, when someone tells you the problem, they're often right, but when they tell you the solution, they're often wrong. And so, and I also think about it with like the car, like Ford, like if I just gave people what they want, it would be a faster horse type of thing. So I think like sometimes like people don't necessarily know what they want, and you have to kind of like, you can do a bunch of polls and ask people, but oftentimes I think it comes from within of like yes, understanding your audience is like number one most important, but then it's like, this feels right to me, or this feels like I think this would do well, this is what I would want to watch, and having full conviction in it, and knowing that sometimes it doesn't pay off in the immediate moment, but like eventually people will come around to that content style, and having a lot of conviction, I think, in yourself. And then also like pinging off the audience, like, hey guys, like, is a video on Twitter interesting to you? Yes, no. And if like 80% of people are like, no, then I'm not going to make that video unless I'm fully aware that I'm only making it for the 20%. So I think it's a balance. And then I also think like what people really want, like my core belief is that people want familiarity wrapped in novelty. So they want the familiar, comfortable feeling that they get from your content, but they want it to feel new. Like if you don't evolve as a creator, you're done. I think like Taylor Swift is like the perfect example of someone that has like evolved through countless eras of like being like country, then pop, then folk, but at the heart of it, what still is the same is like who she is as a person, her amazing lyricism, her amazing like melodic like songwriting, production, her voice, like all these things that are staying consistent, so it's still familiar, but then it's wrapped in like this novelty of newness, and I think that people want that. So when I think about like audience feedback, it's like, why are they watching the videos? Like, what's the core reason? And then how do I create content that fulfills that but feels fresh? So like the Talking Tech series, I think fulfills the core reason of like connecting about tech, but it feels fresh because it's an interview with someone else. Or like the Day in Life review fulfills like the core reason of wanting to learn more about a product, but then it feels fresh because you're like getting coffee with me and we're hanging out.
Yeah.
How do you think about it? Oh no, go ahead.
I love the Day in the Life reviews. I forget his name, but there's somebody based in New York City who does that. Where he
is it Sherman?
Yeah, I think so. Where he wears like 5 watches at a time.
He's one of my best friends, and
really?
I'm actually obsessed that you just mentioned this because literally countless people have been mentioning him to me. Like he is going to blow up on YouTube. There is no doubt about it.
He's the reason I got this Apple Watch is because I watched his videos of how he used it. I'm like, okay, I can definitely use that.
That is crazy. Yes. So I have full conviction. I met him like last year. He had like 10,000 subscribers, and I just felt it. First of all, he's like an incredible person. I love him. Yeah. But also, I just felt like he had it. And you are like the 6th person in the last week to mention him to me.
Really?
So yeah, he is going to blow up. There's no chance this year that he does not crush on YouTube. I also love the Day in Life reviews. Yeah.
And I think I only have one more question is what is the future of Nothing But Tech?
Ooh, big question. I think the future of Nothing But Tech is creating content and services that connect people with technology and connect people with other people that also love technology. So that's going to mean this year much more Day in Life reviews and interviews and explainers, because I think all 3 of those kind of have this transformational experience where you didn't know something and then you do, or you feel optimistic about tech, or you feel just like more connected to the world. And then I think going beyond just this year, expanding into like continuing the podcast, eventual like moonshot dream goal is like a cafe, because I talk about cold brew a lot, like randomly in the videos, just because I love it, like literally have it right here. And so I think like a cafe, like when I think about one of my favorite things to do with friends, it's like get coffee. And so bringing that experience to the community, I think would be really cool. And then, just more videos, more public speaking, everything I'm doing now, but bigger, basically.
Yeah. You said meet people like with tech through content and services. What do you mean by services?
Ooh, services could be like a cafe. Like,
okay.
It could be like an event. Like I hosted an event in person like 2 or 3 years ago, actually with Cody. Like he came. And it was my first time ever meeting people that were watching the videos in person, and it was amazing. Like, I loved it. So I think more so, maybe instead of services, like experiences, I feel like is a better word, because I think like it's so cool to, like, yesterday when I was doing the live stream, there were people coming in from all parts of the world, like Finland, Australia, Europe, Singapore, like all these places. And I think that's amazing that YouTube's able to connect all of us and bring that to a physical space. I think in the future would be really cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, Jacqueline, thank you so much for coming on. I really
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your authenticity and your openness and your willingness to DM me back.
This literally came from the serendipity of me watching one of your videos and just loving it. So thank you so much.